Good evening. I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. Libya, the news of the rendition, abduction, arrest of a suspect in the East Embassy African bombing from the late 20th century, Anas al-Libi. That news points all eyes towards what's going on in Libya. Since Benghazi, 9/11/2012, many questions, books, developments, revelations, committees, some people not talking, others asking to talk anonymously. But Libya is part of a larger story of the Arab Spring, of the question of the Ummah, the Islamic community, and turmoil with the jihadists. Eli Lake, reporting for the Daily Beast and Newsweek, is here with a Benghazi story, and this is one of those stories that's very helpful because it's got important detail in it. You must lay all the dots out when you're understanding how the jihadists work, how Al-Qaeda works. Eli, a very good evening to you. You identify a new name to me and to many, the Mohammed Jamal Network. What is that, and how does that connect to the unfinished business of Benghazi and the death of our ambassador and our patriotic friends? Good evening to you.
Good evening to you. Okay, so the Mohammed Jamal Network is the network of Mohammed Jamal, who is the former operations chief for Egyptian Islamic Jihad in the early 1990s. A significant period because at the time, the leader of that organization was Ayman al-Zawahiri, who is currently the number one in Al-Qaeda and was the longtime deputy to bin Laden after Egyptian Islamic Jihad merged with bin Laden's Al-Qaeda group. And so you have somebody who has a long-time connection to Zawahiri. In 2011, eventually the Egyptians arrest him, but in 2011, and during the revolution, he's let out of jail. And he formed something that came to be known as the Mohammed Jamal Network, which was more extensive than I realized, in part because he was captured in 2012, and the contents of his laptop, initially reported by the Egyptian press and the Long War Journal. I know you've had both Tom and Bill on the show, and they picked this up. But this was then put into a State Department designation of this Mohammed Jamal Network. And it's remarkable because it shows that this individual was still in contact with Ayman al-Zawahiri as of at least 2012, because on his laptop they found correspondence between him and the leader of Al-Qaeda. Keep in mind, this is after the Osama bin Laden raid. This is when Zawahiri, who is allegedly, part of this decimated core of Al-Qaeda, is in contact with what you'd have to say is an aspiring affiliate that we might call Al-Qaeda in Egypt. It also talks about how he was trying to establish an Al-Qaeda affiliate in the Sinai, which of course is extremely important because that brings Al-Qaeda much closer to Israel. But most importantly, what was not in this terrorist designation is something that's well known to people like myself who've been watching the Benghazi story since its beginning and reporting on it. And that is that almost the U.S. intelligence community has absolutely assessed that at least one member, if not more members, of the Mohammed Jamal Network participated in the attack in Benghazi that evening. And I think that's an important that's an important distinction in a lot of ways. And it shows that at least in this particular case, as well as members of Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb and Ansar al-Sharia, which again is not a formal affiliate of Al-Qaeda, but certainly it appears now more connected. And it really, what you see is at least three groups that were part of Al-Qaeda, but this is the first time that the U.S. government has acknowledged that the Mohammed Jamal Network is part of Al-Qaeda, and it's basically on its way to becoming effectively something like an Al-Qaeda affiliate.
All right, they've now established that the MJN, Mohammed Jamal Network, this individual and his gang connections, they're very sophisticated. This is nothing crude about this. They work on the internet. They travel widely. That they were present during the attack on the residence and the annex. And is that the Al-Qaeda link that we've talked about now for more than a year? Is that it?
Well, it's one part of it. I mean, Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb also participated in this. It looks like there was significant coordination with Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, which is the affiliate that we associate with Wahashi, who was recently named as the kind of overall operation.
So what you're talking about is a dream team that showed up that night. They have pieces from everybody's organization.
Well, I should say that it's still considered, the official explanation, at least in some parts of the intelligence community, is that it was something like a flash mob with guns and that it was hastily planned.
Okay.
However, there's an important detail in the State Department's own report, which makes very little mention of who the culprits are, particularly any connection to Al-Qaeda in this regard. But there is this detail, which is that there was somebody who was actually casing the facility on the day of the attack, before the attack. That suggests to me that what you didn't have in the Benghazi attack was an elaborate plan that was hatched for months and months in advance that involved the coordination and movement of people for a specific operation. But what I think it also shows is that there was somebody who was extremely close with Ayman al-Zawahiri, who in the early 1990s was basically his operations chief of Egyptian Islamic Jihad. And he had a network in Benghazi that participated in this attack that killed the ambassador, as did Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, which is the North African affiliate, which had some connections to the recent hostage-taking in Algeria. And finally, you had Ansar al-Sharia, which, again, is not a formal affiliate of Al-Qaeda, but ideologically certainly was in the same category, and also was, participating in this attack, and clearly in this action, but in others as well, showed that they were intending to attack.
My memory, Eli, is that day was centered around the protest and the storming of aspects of the American embassy in Cairo, where Zawahiri's brother was a gang leader, a ringleader of that larger demonstration that started the day. So what you're saying is Zawahiri's brother, Zawahiri is connected to the Mohammed Jamal network that were present in Benghazi, and Zawahiri's brother is in the Cairo demonstration. That suggests we can link all these events. These are not independent actors; they're networked.
Well, it's at this point, I think it's possible for there to be some improvisation, but for there also to be lots of Al-Qaeda elements. I think, listen, you saw a version of Ansar al-Sharia that also was protesting in Tunisia, and you're right, Mohammed al-Zawahiri.
His brother, his younger brother.
Of Ayman al-Zawahiri was one of the spokesmen, at least for the protesters, after this internet video. And it certainly is true that in Salafist and jihadist sort of web forums and other media, they were the ones that were making a big issue of this internet video, which really didn't, gain any kind of mainstream.
I want to push you a little bit, Eli, because you're a very careful reporter. There has long been the suggestion that Benghazi was ordered by Zawahiri. That there's no evidence for that here, but there's certainly the suggestion that it would have been possible, that there were ways for him to deliver his orders, if it happened.
I think what we've seen in the last year is that Ayman al-Zawahiri has far more operational control of Al-Qaeda affiliates than the public statements of the Obama administration leading up to the 2012 election.
Very diplomatic.
That's absolutely the case.
That's a very careful way of saying it.
What I don't know is the specifics that would suggest there was a trail that led directly from Zawahiri to the Benghazi plot. What I have figured out, or what not me alone, I should credit the Wall Street Journal, first reported the participation of the Mohammed Jamal network in October of 2012. It was a great story by Siobhan Gorman. She had it first. I wish I had had that. But I have since confirmed that initial report. And what that tells us is that what is clearly an associate of Ayman, the leader of Al-Qaeda, somebody who has applied, if you will, for membership and to have a formal affiliate from his old boss, had a network in Benghazi where at least one of those people participated in the attack on the embassy. It's another clue at this point, and certainly I think that there's more to this.
You cite in your story in the Daily Beast the Congressman Jason Chaffetz, who has traveled to Benghazi. I believe that his committee is part of the investigation here. Does he believe this connection with Mohammed Jamal is significant?
Yes, he does think it's significant. He says that he believes that it draws the link closer to Al-Qaeda. But listen, and the other thing is just that I think is significant, that is kind of sometimes using the Orwell phrase, hiding right in front of our nose. It was on 9/11. It was it's a significant day for Al-Qaeda, which cares a great deal about dates of its attacks and, creating its own mythology in this sense. So, and it happened in coordination, as you said, with other protests at U.S. embassies, that, was a controversy in many ways ginned up by Al-Qaeda and its fellow travelers.
Eli Lake, National Security for the Daily Beast and Newsweek. Benghazi, not forgotten, guys, okay? We're following very carefully. We go where the evidence takes us. I'd like to make the leap, but not yet. I'm John Batchelor.